Christianity as a whole has, of course, rejected polytheism from being the truth. However, the irony is that they have embraced the Orthodox Trinity, which is actually their attempt to explain passages dealing with plurality as being not polytheism, which, when you get into the full spectrum of definitions, terms, meaning that they get in, all of which is, I shouldn't say all of which, but much of which has no foundation in the Bible. You have to go to philosophy, you have to go to extra biblical teaching and ideas to fully embrace their doctrine. You just realize how foolish it really is. Now, they do, thankfully teach the truth of three persons, but they've rejected the truth that this means more than one Lord. And again, from my previous videos, we've looked at 1 John 5:7, we looked at Psalm 110:1, and we've very easily concluded that the Bible does teach in more than one Lord, and it also, of course, teaches in only one Lord. This is the simplest conclusion you can come to. Anything else is just more complicated, which demonstrates it's false, because it's complicating what doesn't need to be complicated. But furthermore, for those who reject this position, I've already pointed out Revelation chapter 5 as being a absolute proof of polytheism. But even beyond that, I want to challenge people who reject my position and say, if I'm not telling you the truth about this, then it is simply impossible to demonstrate polytheism in any situation. Because what is described in the text, if this were not the Bible, and you were just reading this in literature, and you understood it to be talking, let's just say Revelation chapter 5, for example, or Revelation chapter 4, were books of another religion, you would conclude this is dealing with polytheism. But yet somehow, when it's the Bible, you conclude that it is not polytheism. So you have a radically inconsistent point of view, a biased viewpoint that approaches the text from, it cannot ever mean this, which is a problem, because I'm trying to allow the text to speak for itself. So if Revelation chapter 5 does not demonstrate polytheism, and of course there's the one sitting on the throne, and then there's the Lamb who comes and approaches the throne and takes the book out of the right hand of him that sat on the throne, if that is not polytheism, polytheism cannot ever be demonstrated in any context, the Bible or otherwise. See, it is manifestly obvious that there's more than one Lord here. There's more than one person. And of course, the Lamb and him that sat on the throne receive worship, which of course only God has the right to receive worship. So, again, for those who reject what I point out, you have no foundation to ever speak about polytheism. You can't if we were to, make a painting, and I'm sure people have already made paintings of this scene. If you're making a painting of this, or an illustration, whatever, you're inherently going to have polytheism. And you have people out there who have, there's Catholic drawings of basically three persons looking identical, and people say, oh, this is heretical, this is terrible. Well, again, I'm not agreeing with the images, because again, I don't want to create images I think it's completely unnecessary and actually ungodly. It's idolatry to really do that, generally speaking. But and plus, not to mention the images of Jesus out there with the long hair and all that. I don't believe that's accurate. But if you take those ideas, like if you were to draw this picture out, you'd have to conclude polytheism, especially if you believe that both the Lamb and him that sat on the throne are worthy of worship. If you were to draw the scene out, you got polytheism because you have two distinct lords, two distinct persons interacting with each other. That's inherently polytheism. If you were to read this in pagan literature or something, well, you're going to recognize it's more than one God, because there's interaction. There's, just as human beings interact with each other, there's multiplicity of people, of human beings, and it's easy to demonstrate when that is the case. All you need is more than one person. Well, the same thing's going on here in the scene in heaven in Revelation chapter 5. So, again, if you reject polytheism, you have no foundation to ever be able to demonstrate if polytheism can be proven in any context, because you've rejected what it says. And consistency proves that we are dealing with a multiplicity of lords. This is the Lord said unto my Lord, for example. Or, again, this isn't that specific situation from Psalm 110:1, but you get the idea that here's the Lord sitting on his throne, and there's the Lord approaching the Lord, taking the book out of the Lord's hand. Of course, it's at the same time only one Lord, which is literally nonsense in light of the fact that there's two persons, but yet that's also a truth. So, I'm just pleading for realism here. Take the text for what it says. Come to an obvious conclusion. Come to what the text is actually saying. And stop with saying, no, it can't actually mean that because X, Y, and Z. Well, the text is explicit. There's no mistaking what's going on. It's just you're truly uncomfortable with the conclusion that's here. And the only way to be consistent is to recognize what it says. So that's what I have to say about this. If you can't recognize polytheism from this, you have no right to ever be able to demonstrate polytheism from being true, because you're going to have a hypocritical standard for doing so. One place that could have very similar interaction between two persons, two divine persons going on, and you say, oh, that, yeah, in pagan literature, yeah, that's obviously polytheism, but yet when it's written in the Bible, you don't allow it because your theology can't allow it. So it's clearly biased, and it's just not allowing the text to speak for itself. So the text wins over anybody else's logic. So yeah, that's the conclusion we must come to. Amen.